Madam Acting Speaker, I rise to remind the House that the commemoration of the 10th anniversary of September 11, 2001 are commemorations that cannot go unheeded or dismissed just because the day in question has been passed. Madam Speaker, yesterday, like many other members of this chamber, including I note the member for Castle Hill, was invited as a guest of the Consul General of the United States, along with the former Consul General of Australia to New York, Mr. Ken Allen AM, to be part of the commemoration service remembering the tragic events of September 11, 2001. Madam Speaker, one thing that concerns me and certainly has been highlighted over the course of the last couple of days when recalling those events has been the community's and the media's tendency to talk about nearly 3,000 souls that were lost. I have been concerned at the recording, certainly over the last 24 hours in the Sydney media, how people commemorate the nearly 3,000 souls that were lost on that tragic day. Now, why I'm concerned is because there weren't nearly 3,000 souls. There were 2,977 souls lost. And I raise that as a legitimate concern because those 2,977 people had parents, they had friends, they had relatives, they had children, they had mums and dads who will never see them again because of the tragic acts of Osama bin Laden and, of course, the acts of the Taliban. Madam Speaker, we can't just refer it and dismiss it as nearly 3,000 people. For the parents of that 2,977th body that was recovered, that wasn't something that can be dismissed. That wasn't a figure that can be just glossed over. That's not a number that we can put together as an annex to a speech or an annex to a press release. That is a number that is real. It is real to families that are alive today. Now, you recall that of those 2,977 souls, 10 of them were Australians. 10 of them were remembered yesterday at St Mary's Cathedral at a service presided over by the Archbishop of Sydney, Cardinal George Pell. Those 10 people included a lady who is not far, who lived and grew up in the area that the member for Castle Hill and I represent. She lived in the Hills District and worked for the Red Cross. She was on a holiday to commemorate and to celebrate her retirement from work. She is a person that will be gravely missed in our society, in our community, and she is a person that will be warmly remembered for her charity. Madam Acting Speaker, John Howard, in addressing the Congress in 2002, highlighted the fact that the retaliation against the Taliban in Afghanistan at the end of these events was not something that we needed to do to seek revenge. It was something that we needed to do to seek justice. And as a former officer in the Australian Army, I've been fortunate enough to know many people who have served and are still serving in Afghanistan and Iraq in response to the acts of September 11, 2001. I recall the funerals and the commemoration services of some of those soldiers that didn't come back. They, like the 2,977 souls that were lost, have parents. They have brothers and sisters, and some of them unfortunately have family. They've got their own children. And we need to, as John Howard said, calmly consider the consequences of the acts of terrorism. We need to not only seek revenge, we need not seek revenge, we need to seek justice. I think the words that we heard from the former Prime Minister were very, very important, because we're not in Afghanistan and Iraq to necessarily wage a war that is unnecessary without justice. These are wars with justice. And as I call the House to remember silently and in consideration of the work of the soldiers over there in Afghanistan and Iraq, I ask the House to also consider the reasons why we're there. They're not reasons that we need to put down and dismiss as something that are unwarranted. For the families of those 2,977 souls, the reasons that we're over there at the moment in Afghanistan and Iraq are real, and they are there because we, like every other Western democracy, seek justice.
In accordance with